you can see several different versions of this product that I've outlined in here, several different embodiments. The first one is based on a spring, and the point of this invention is it's a device that you basically slip onto a cigarette, and basically either the spring model or the screen version, which I actually kind of prefer the screen version, but you can light your cigarette through the screen or the spring, as the case may be, and basically it just prevents your ash from getting all over the damn place. And you'll see in the video, the next video, of what I'm talking about, how big of a mess this is. And like I said, though, I do have several different ways, as you can see here, and you'll see in the PDF file that I've included in this folder, several different methods of doing it. Definitely read the text of this document as well. When you pull it up, it has some very informative stuff in it. And be sure too to watch the Watch Me Last video, because that's the actual sales pitch of this thing, and it's how I think you might be able to benefit from it and take advantage of this as a product if I'm offering it to you. But this product, like I said, really would be of great assistance, to a smoker, from making a mess all over the place. And there's still plenty of people that smoke cigarettes out there, actual cigarettes. E-cigarettes have their failings. I do have a good idea, though, of how to make the ultimate e-cigarette, by the way. If you end up doing business with me on this, I may yours may be the first door I knock on. In fact, will be the first door I knock on if I do come up with that as a patent and offer that for sale at some point. But yeah, this device basically will contain the ash, and then, like I said, it's reusable, and you can empty your ash and remove your butt from it when you're done smoking the cigarette, and then put it back in your pocket. But like I said, I actually have a little tube container for these devices, which could be simplified, and I talk about that in the text a little bit. It really just has to be something to prevent the cigarette ash from getting all over the inside of your pocket. But the idea is to make these things last a while, but not so long. And like I said, if you're a cigarette lighter manufacturer that's seeing this video, my idea is to basically include this in a pack of your cigarette lighters to bring some business back to you, from those cheap Chinese lighters that a lot of people get. So this could be extra incentive to have a little product like this, because everybody that smokes makes something of a mess at some point or another. And the great thing about this is that you don't even need an ashtray with it. I mean, because it'll contain the ash. It is open-ended, and I'll show you that here in a second. I'll go show you that right now. See, the devices here are open-ended, so, and this is basically a cigarette. You can see highlighted in yellow, but it's my rendition of a lit cigarette there. But that's a spring version, and this is a screen version, which, like I said, this is still the one I prefer. There are several different ways of attaching this. This is like some kind of a rubberized little collar that would grip onto the cigarette. But the actual prototype that I made is more like this. It just uses the screen alone, but again, you wouldn't want to probably do it that way. This would be a much better way of making that into a viable product. But basically, it contains the ash. It's open-ended, but you can actually smoke a cigarette as long as you kind of hold it, either level or a little bit upright, upward pointing a little bit. You won't lose any ash out of it at all, so you won't make a mess. So you don't even have to have an ashtray nearby to actually smoke a cigarette with one of these. So it's kind of nice. And again, at any point, you can relight your cigarette, even if you've smoked some of it earlier and put it away or whatever. You can relight the cigarette through the screen, so it's kind of a nice little feature. But it will need some kind of a tube of some kind, some kind of a carrier like this. to carry the device around so it doesn't make a mess in your pocket. Um, but basically, um, like I said, this patent mostly details a couple of different ways of doing that, but then it also includes a cigarette snuffer concept, which this may actually have to be separated into a separate patent, because this idea is basically a little tube that you stick on a cigarette, and you basically set it just like it's shown and detailed here in the drawing. It tells you how it's used. And again, I got a little crude prototype of this too, which I'll show you. But you basically put this on your cigarette, and you put it to the point where you want the cigarette to burn out. So in other words, it allows you to cut the use of your cigarette down quite a bit. Like let's say if you had a cigarette and you set it to the halfway point, well, you can smoke your cigarette right up until that halfway point, and it'll basically put itself out at that point. You can put it back in your pocket and smoke the rest later, after you remove the tube. So it allows you to essentially get more mileage out of your cigarettes. Now, if you are a lighter sales company, that means there's more lighters of yours they're going to use because they're going to have to light their cigarette twice or 3 times or whatever. But it does allow them to reduce their smoking rate a little bit and save money in the process off of the expensive cigarettes out there these days. So again, a lot of these things actually make smoking a little more practical for people to smoke real cigarettes. So it could extend the life of your business. A little bit longer, than it otherwise would be. But it does allow people to, reduce their smoking rate a little bit too. So it does help people's health a little bit as well to have that snuffer. And certainly it's nice having the screen, so it just doesn't make a mess so much. Even though there's e-cigarettes out there, like I said, they've got their flaws, and I'll talk about that again if I offer my idea for the improved e-cigarette, because I know what they're doing wrong. But basically, for right now, this is the case, and there certainly is pretty big volume potential in this, especially worldwide, Poland, places like that. They smoke religiously. But certainly in the U.S. and so forth, there's still quite a few smokers, myself included. So at the end of the day, this is a product that I wish for every day. That I wish I had just a good working prototype. My prototype, it kind of sucks because I made it out of like screen, and it's got this coating on it. So when I smoke it, the cigarette does heat the screen up, but it's got like this coating on it. So I'm kind of breathing in these fumes that it is generating. So even though it's basically aluminum screen, again they have some kind of coating on it, and I don't think it's anodized coating. So I think it's like paint or something. So, but at any rate, the point is that this should be made out of material that lasts a while, but not too long. It should last, certainly longer than a pack of cigarettes. But eventually people, it should last longer than a pack of lighters, perhaps. But and maybe not quite that long, but certainly long enough to, where people can get some good use out of it before they are ready to buy some more lighters again, if you know what I mean. So the point is, though, is to have a product that's good and lasts and is made to a quality where it'll work. And like I said, this need not be that expensive to tool up on if you want to manufacture it yourself. But if you do want to manufacture it yourself, as opposed to having it made overseas, you might have to invest in some capital equipment to automate this. But the fact of the matter is, though, is it should be a readily doable product, and would be of great help to people. Now there were some similar concepts in the prior art, some of the patents I uncovered, but they were like integrated into the cigarette and everything, like back in the 50s and 60s. Some people came up with some ideas kind of like this, I noticed, but at the end of the day, that's not practical. I mean, the only way to make this thing work is a separate device. And they did have some things similar to this back in the 20s when, those little cigarette, ash holders, the cigarette, what they call those, the cigarette holders or whatnot, were popular. These days only like super villains, use those. The cigarette holders, those have gone out of style. But the point is that, this would be a good product to really entice people. Again, while you're still selling lighters, this could really bring some business back to you and regain market share from those cheap Chinese lighters that you're lucky to have last you a week or two. It gives people extra incentive to want to buy like a pack of Bic lighters or something. If you happen to be Bic, because if you are Bic, you're probably the first people I want to try to talk to on this. But I still don't know if Bic's going to be interested in it. It's just hard to say. So you might be somebody else. The point is that this is a good little product. Both of these little products have some real merit in their own ways. But like I said, the snuffer in particular could save people money and everything like that, and that's always an incentive for people to want to buy a product, if they think it might help them reduce their smoking rate or something like that. That's one of the things a snuffer could theoretically do, but at the very least it's something that may save them some money, if nothing else. But the ash retainer is something I see being a stable product for as long as people are smoking anyway. So but yeah, this like I said, the snuffer, in fact you can see it, like I said, in use here. It's basically a very simple little tube in its basic embodiment, and you just slide it down to the cigarette as it's progressively smoked. You're starting with a full cigarette here, and it's set to burn out here, so when the cigarette gets to this point it burns out, and then later on when you're ready to smoke it again, you scoot the thing down. You scoot the thing down to the next level, and smoke it down to that level, and then it burns out, and then eventually you remove the thing entirely and finish the cigarette off. So that's kind of the idea, and certainly there is a version that combines the two ideas here that actually has an asher plus the snuffer built into it. So and again, it should have its own little case. It has to, because it has to store not only that snuffer but the cigarette too that's partially finished. So you'd have to have some kind of little tube or something for that with a lid on it, so that again people don't make a mess inside their pocket or purse or whatever. So anyway, like I said, that finishes this video, and you can check out the next one. Thanks.